Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Mile High Game Guys board gaming podcast. I'm your host Adrian.
I'm Zach.
And I am Jeff.
And joining us for this review episode is returning guest David.
Hey, what's up?
Hello, David.
We're reviewing a board game.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's what's up.
What game?
Fury of Dracula.
That's good. I played that a couple times.
3rd edition. In fact, most of my plays have been on your copy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I believe that's
And by
true.
most, I mean all.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
It's because it's sleeved, and I don't want to sleeve mine.
Yeah. So yeah, we're reviewing Fury of Dracula. This is a 2015 release from designers Frank Brooks, Stephen Hand, Kevin Wilson. Artists include Chris Beck and Samuel Shimoda. Published by ADC Blackfire and Fantasy Flight Games here in the States. It plays 2 to 5 players and takes 120 to 180 minutes. Zach, you got a rules breakdown for us?
Yeah, sure. In Fury of Dracula, one player will take the role of Dracula, while everyone else will be playing hunters trying to find and kill him before he grows too powerful. During each day and night phase, you will be traveling on roads and trains from one city to the next, grabbing train tickets to help you cover longer distances, gathering supplies to help in the coming fights, trade useful items and information between hunters, and searching cities to find traces of Dracula's influence. After each night phase, Dracula awakens and begins his turn. Moving from city to city, he will be attempting to stay hidden while laying down traps to catch the hunters, red herrings to draw them away from him, and maturing new vampires to gain more influence. If the hunters are able to locate Dracula, they can engage in a duel, playing cards with icons that hopefully match Dracula's card, canceling his abilities and dealing damage. If the hunters are able to deal 15 damage to Dracula, they win. But if Dracula gets to 13 influence first, he wins.
Deceptively simple.
Yeah, that explanation almost makes it seem far more dry and boring than it actually is.
That's my goal.
Congratulations.
Every time I want people to just be like, that sounds really boring.
Well, you're trying to bore them so they don't feel bad that they can't buy this game.
Exactly, yes.
Right.
You can. It's just
I'm just so used to doing Euro games that it just seeps into everything.
Okay. All right, so let's talk here as we are...
Can we do a real talk right now?
real talk.
I can take my chair, I can fold it on the other, put it the other way, and I can sit with the back in my,
Yeah,
my chest.
we
Yeah.
all have to do that.
That's just how we
real-
record now.
That's how real this talk will be.
Yes.
So we like to start our reviews off here talking a little bit about kind of what our thoughts were going into some of our early plays of these games. So, David, let's start with you since you're the guest. Like I said, I played all of my plays on your copy, and I'm pretty sure you'd played before I had played with you. So, do you remember back when you first got Fury of Dracula, what you were thinking?
Yeah, well, I'd heard it was good, and I heard that Fantasy Flight was losing the Games Workshop's licenses, and so I bought a bunch of different ones that were going away, and Fury of Dracula was one of them. All I really knew about it was that it was 4v1 with one person being Dracula, and I like horror. So I bought it with a bunch of other games that were going away at the same time and so when it got here, all I really knew was that it was Dracula versus 4 vampire hunters, and I enjoy horror themes, so I figured that it would be something that I'd like. Plus, it seemed very thematic, and that's another big thing that I look for in games. The first time we're set to play it, I'd spent a good amount of time, figuring out how to play beforehand, so hopefully it wouldn't take too long to teach. But my initial thoughts going in were that I was just kind of excited to play a Dracula themed game that I'd heard good things about.
Right on. Jeff, what about you?
I had wanted this game back when it was 2nd edition, before the first time the license was ripped away. I've heard this was the best version, and I was in the same boat of like, hey, I've wanted this game for a long time. Games Workshop's pulling their bullshit again and pulling away the license. It's going to be hard to find. I did the same thing David did and bought a ton of games that I really wanted from that Fantasy Flight license that I just couldn't get anymore. And I think the first time I played was also on David's copy, but I think we had gotten them right around the same time. I distinctly remember going to ThinkGeek to get my copy, however, because it had pretty much been wiped out from everywhere else. And I could find it there for at least MSRP or slightly better.
Yeah. So I think I first heard about Fury of Dracula, I think maybe from Shut Up and Sit Down, one of their podcasts. It was definitely from some podcast that I'd started listening to like right around the time we were starting ours up. And I remember thinking that it sounded really interesting. Like the one versus many and like the the way they talked about it. I think they were reviewing the second edition at the time, because I remember them throwing a big fit about Dracula being able to like be in a fight and then just vanish and go anywhere on the board, which is a thing that he can do in, I believe, second edition that they modified in third. So yeah, when Fantasy Flight lost that Games Workshop license, you guys, I knew that you guys were snapping up copies, and I didn't feel like I needed to get my own copy, but I was looking forward to getting to play with you guys. And so yeah, going into it, I was really excited to kind of do the same thing. I thought playing Dracula sounded really interesting, though, kind of having the chase, having 4 hunters chase you around Europe, and the way you try and deceive them and lead them away sounded fun. So, Zach, what about you?
So this isn't my first experience with hidden movement. I think the first time I had tried it was with the Pandemic on the Brink with the bioterrorists. But I remember playing that and I was like, this is okay. And then I looked online and people...
that thing I dressed up at Gen Con, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I had heard people like, all right, if you want real hidden movement games, you want to try Fury of Dracula, Scotland Yard, or Letters from Whitechapel. And then, like everybody else, once we heard that Fantasy Flight was losing all of those and you guys bought it, it's like, well, I'll finally get a chance to try it out now. The first time I'd heard of it was from Shut Up and Sit Down. It was their review, the video review they did of it. And it was always in the back of my mind of like, I'd heard this is a really good hidden movement game. So if I get a chance to try it out, I would like to. And so that's how I came towards the game with it. Yeah.
Okay. It's a bummer. Was only in existence for 2 years in this edition.
Yep.
Oh. All right. So moving on to components. Yeah, the main board is solid. I think it's got pretty good art and graphic design on it. It's basically Europe and has a bunch of cities on it. Some are major cities, some are minor cities. They're very clearly denoted. Those cities are connected by railways and roadways, and then the railroads are further divided into like the older Eastern Europe rickety rail lines and like the modern Western Europe fancy rail lines, and those are white and yellow. But all three of those things are really clear to see, the roads versus the yellow railways versus the white railways. There's a whole lot of little cardboard bits and pieces.
There's a lot of special conditions that happen this game that you might not even see from playthrough to playthrough.
Yeah, like weird fog and lightning storms and...
consecrated ground.
Yeah.
Roadblocks.
Yeah. But those all have solid cardboard pieces. Some of the ones like the roadblocks, I think, they're one of the simpler ones. I mean, they're really simple cardboard punch-out. They're not quite as thick and uniquely shaped as like the storm tokens.
But they are double-sided between road and train.
Yep. There's a whole lot of cards.
Which is why we've mostly played David's one, because they're sleeved.
Yeah.
Yes, because I am a proponent of sleeving games.
As a Magic the Gathering player.
Yes. So Dracula has his own entire deck, and it uses kind of a similar hidden location system as, say, like Star Wars Rebellion, where the person who's hiding, in this case Dracula in Star Wars The Rebellion, has a huge deck that represents every possible location, and they pick where they are out of that one. The difference is that in this one, Dracula moves around, so you're constantly, as Dracula, every time your turn comes around, you're pulling a new card out to show where you've moved. And the other card slides along this track that is 6 spaces long?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Which leads to kind of an interesting situation where, any location you go to, you can't cycle back around to
immediately
for at least 6 turns, depending on what cards get played and stuff. Like there's some ways you can kind of maybe move some of that stuff along.
Yeah.
But yeah, so... and those cards, those location cards, are divided between land and sea cards, so it's easier for the hunters to see when or if Dracula goes to sea, which is kind of nice. I can give them a little bit of a hint as to where he might be.
Mm-hmm. There's minis.
There are minis.
Five miniatures.
Yep.
Yep. There's a Dracula miniature and then one for all 4 of the hunters.
Which Ant constantly gives me shit about for not having painted.
You should probably just go ahead and paint them.
They're pretty soft plastic, though, so...
Yeah,
they
I think
they definitely
fine.
need a protective coat if you're going to paint them.
Yeah.
I like how you put bands on them so you can kind of distinctly tell who they are from a distance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel like that was definitely needed. It's a little bit... with just the gray just the gray minis, it's hard to differentiate from a distance, so I'd repurpose some of my loom bands from Blood Bowl.
Yep.
Makes sense.
But yeah, overall, I'd say components are solidly good. I don't know. What do you guys think? Any
I would say
comments or anything on components?
Standard for Fantasy
Yeah,
Flight.
it's Fantasy Flight components.
They're good. Mm-hmm. Art style, consistent.
Yep.
I like the little day-night wheel
Yeah.
for the week.
I like the face on it.
Yep. As it turns desperate.
Yep. I like that the events clearly have either a hunter symbol or a Dracula symbol. So when you have to drop from the bottom, you're immediately like, God damn it!
Yeah,
Or,
you know for sure that you fucked up.
Yep.
Supplying at night was a poor decision.
Almost like night is the domain of Dracula.
It's true. Day, not the domain of Dracula.
No.
He's been like, no, thank you. You all can have that.
Yep.
Otherwise, he'd be known as Dracula.
What? What do you call a day walker?
Yeah, Daywalker.
I believe that is the technical definition.
Okay.
Term, not definition.
If I remember my physics at all.
All right. Yeah, so there you go. It's a nice little brief overview of the components. Moving on, rules and rules explanation. So, David, I think you were really, like you mentioned, you took the time to kind of learn a little bit about this game before you taught everybody. So, how was learning the initial rules, and then how was it teaching a whole bunch of people this game?
I mean, this is one thing that I feel like teaching people the game is one thing that Fantasy Flight does well, because they have the two rule books. They have the Learn to Play rule book, which kind of walks you through setting up the game, what you're going to need to know on your first play, and then gives you a step-by-step as you go, which is nice. And then they have the other appendix, I guess.
The rules reference?
Yes, the rules reference. That you can then go to while you're playing the game for, we're having a question about fog, or what do lightning tokens do, and things like that. And so you can find it in there. So I would say it was pretty straightforward, which has been my experience with most Fantasy Flight games, because they do split it out between here's what you need to know how to get everything started your first time, and this is what you look to when you have specific questions while you're playing.
Twilight Imperium 3rd edition would have been way better
Yes.
had that
Yes.
been the thing that Fantasy Flight did back then.
That was 10 years ago.
Yeah, the more games I play that have that, the more I appreciate it. Because I feel like the first time I played a game that had the Learn to Play and the other one, it just felt... I don't know, it just feels like you're looking through too many things, but then you're like, once you know how to play, you can just ignore the Learn to Play.
Yeah.
And then you can just go for the rules reference, which is really well laid out, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for me, like, I feel like I was spoiled because I picked up Ghost Stories, I guess 6-8 months ago, and they do not. It's not nearly as good. And I was just like, why?
Yep.
Yeah. That's a problem with like some of their older ones. Like Jeff mentioned, Twilight Imperium. Like the rule books for that one are a mess.
Good luck playing
trying to find
Rudebound
anything.
2nd edition.
So they've gotten better, and I agree. Like they did a similar thing again, going back to like Star Wars Rebellion, multiple rule books that break it down. Like here's what this will get you playing, and then as you play and questions arise, here's where you look.
I don't think at any point during this game did we really have any rules questions about stuff. There may have been some real specific stuff that we had to look up, but
I'd say overall it's sort of rules light in that, like, once you know how to play, it's just about like specific instances.
in this distinct situation,
What does this card mean exactly? And you're like, okay, but
and those are things that may or may not come up.
it's mostly the event deck.
yeah.
That has a lot of crazy cards.
Yeah, there's a lot of cards in there, and in theory, you would get different cards on playthroughs.
In theory.
Yeah.
Ha.
So overall, pretty easy to teach. And any complications you're going to have are going to be some of those just weird ways that things work together in some one-off instance that will happen with any game with as big a deck of cards as this has.
I think it was mostly with combat in the dawn and dusk combat.
Yeah.
Is this a day combat? Is this a night combat?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it fell apart a little bit. But
And then also, like, at dusk, Dracula has to take certain things, and because if you put fog out, if you put lightning out, you always have to take one off then.
Roadblocks too.
Yeah.
Yep.
timing was key and can get a little complicated, but doesn't take enough away from the game.
No. All right, which then brings us on to the crux of this game, and where almost all of the really meaty discussion is going to take place: gameplay.
As a thematic 1v4 game, gameplay is where it's all at.
Yeah.
Yes.
This game, I think, nails the Dracula theme through the mechanics of this game. I recently rewatched the old 90s edition. Bram
Was it
Stoker's
before or
Dracula.
after 1997?
It was before. So
Okay.
it's
Oh,
wow,
it's
really
even older.
Eons ago.
Eons.
But I watched Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I was really surprised. Like, it had been a long time since I watched it, and I'd kind of forgotten that, like, they have whole sequences where, like, the hunters are chasing him on the train, and then they're like, oh, he took to the seas all of a sudden, and then, like, oh, he came into a port earlier, now he's on a carriage, and now we're racing to beat him to the castle, and all of that. Like, I was watching and I was like, oh man, like, this feels like when I play this game. Like, the hunters are hot on your trail and you're like diving into the water and jumping back out, and you're trying to get to the castle to heal before they can corner you. And oh man, that one guy's definitely going to try and punch you in the face with his privilege.
His wealth and privilege.
Yeah, wealth and privilege. Yeah. Left arm is wealth, right arm is privilege.
So there's 4 different characters.
Yes.
Van Helsing, the rich dude, the
Lord Goldeming,
Lord Goldemain, the lady,
Mina Harker,
Yep.
Nina Harker, and the pious guy.
John
priest.
Seward.
John Seward, yeah.
And then there's Dracula.
Yeah, and then there's a ton of allies. Like, Dracula has Renfield,
The brides.
the brides.
Yep.
The heroes have a couple of their own.
Well, allies are one thing that didn't really come up in a lot of the plays that I
No,
know.
they're
I've only
very
seen
rare.
one. Yeah.
Jonathan Harker.
Yeah.
And I've only seen one Dracula ally, which was the brides,
Yeah.
which I did not use as the actual brides.
Right.
Ally. And 3 of us have played Dracula. Zach is the only one that has not played as Dracula.
Yeah. Which, I mean, going forward, if I had the choice, I would always want to be Dracula. I would turn it down just to let somebody else experience that, because I think Dracula is by far the most fun in this game. It's where you feel the most tension. I think as the hunters, it can be very frustrating sometimes.
And I think you need someone playing Dracula that might not always be into fucking crush the hunters top to bottom.
Yes.
Because you need to make the game fun as Dracula, because I think there are ways that you can, I don't know.
There are cheese strategies.
Well,
Yeah.
So it depends on exactly like how things are going. Like, if you are a really good Dracula to where like they just don't, and I haven't seen this because every game I've played, when I've been Dracula, and hell, even the one time I was the survivors, you get the card like right at the start of the game that's like, hey Dracula, where are you?
Yeah.
And then
Can you just pinpoint that for us?
and so right from the start, the hunters are on Dracula's tail.
Yeah.
Hypnosis or
Yeah, Mina Harker's hypnosis.
I have
card.
never played a game where we don't, like, after the first day, we don't have an idea of where,
exactly.
where region-wise he is.
Which so that
In
lead-
multiple games, we got the fucking hypnosis.
Yep.
So I was on both sides of that.
Yeah. And so that makes it really hard when that happens. It makes it really hard for Dracula to lay a long enough trail to be able to mature things for a victory. So at that point, when that comes out, Dracula's only hope is just to last for the whole game, which
is
then it becomes a matter of how interesting does Dracula want to make surviving for the whole game.
Yeah. So we should mention he can move like 6 times, and once he moves a 7th, so basically a week, whatever is at the end of the trail falls off and matures, which can be real bad shit for the hunters.
Yeah. Well, so
they want to try and find him within like a week's movement.
Well, because we talked about how he places locations down as he moves, and those move along. What we didn't mention is that along with placing a location down, you play a card from your hand, an encounter card, and those can be traps, like, you know, certain bodyguards, or like maybe you leave a vampire in your wake, that when the hunters arrive there, you can initiate as an ambush, or you can force them to search and then have some kind of an effect. But if they never find that and that goes off, then a lot of them have a text at the bottom that says, you know, matured effect, where it gives you some powerful bonus.
Gain influence, which are basically victory points, or a lot of other crazy bullshit. Like, hey, remember those items you used to have? Well, not anymore.
Yep.
Which I've almost never seen Dracula consistently mature things.
And a lot of the games that we played, we got a lot of those like distinctly pinpoint where Dracula is, and you were able to kind of rush in that general direction.
Yeah, so I've played multiple games without y'all, but in 2 of them, I distinctly remember that card did not come up early. I mean, it might have come up later. But the first game I played, Dracula was able to mature a decent amount of stuff. In fact, Dracula matured 2 copies of the bodyguards, which meant fighting Dracula was impossible. Because it's like, oh, you take 2 damage. Do you have a weapon? Okay, now you take 4 damage because you don't have a weapon. Oh, and then it happens again. So you pretty much couldn't fight Dracula at that point.
Wow.
Yeah,
and then the one time that I was Dracula, it did not come up early, and I matured my way to victory. We didn't make it to week 3.
Which, see, I think almost every game I have played has made it to week 3, where it basically is like the hunters.
The end of week 3.
Yeah. Basically, like the hunters, like, we have 4 more turns to kill Dracula or we lose.
Yep.
And Dracula is like, I've got to just stay away from them long enough to not get punched to death.
Because at the end of week 3, his despair meter is all the way full, and he'll get 3 victory points at the end of every day.
Well, every time he places a city card.
Yeah, which
So-
is every turn.
Yeah,
It should be every turn if he's at that point in the game. At
Correct.
least. Unless he's real close to getting murdered.
Yes. And you're playing advanced rules.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, that entire kind of feeling like when we've played, especially having the hunters right on your tail from the beginning, really as Dracula, it's frustrating, but it's also almost like exhilarating. Trying to make that decision, like, okay, well, I can move to like one of these 4 spaces. Like, where am I gonna move? And you make your decision, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna move here. And then the hunters on their turn, like, well, he could have went to one of these 4 locations. Which one did he go to?
Your heart rate goes up a little bit every time they're like, oh, he could have gone here. And you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
You got to practice your poker face.
Yes.
Yeah, big time.
I had one. There's a picture of me at Twitter of just Zach had taken just Dracula thinking. It's just me with my hands on my face, just be like, fuck you.
Yeah. And it's really hard. Like, we play a lot of other games and things where sometimes, like, actively misleading the other team is a part of it. And I feel like in this one, the general atmosphere at the table doesn't lead to that. So as Dracula, it's not ever like, oh, well, maybe I went to Paris. You should go check out Paris.
You just sit there fucking silent.
You just sit there and you're like, oh, God, I am so screwed. They are right on my tail. They know exactly. They are in my head. How are they in my head? Jeff, how did you nail exactly where I wanted to come ashore? And you put consecrated ground there. And now I'm stuck at sea and I'm fucked.
Because it was the
horrible.
I went chips all in on fuck you and being in the Adriatic or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, I mean, why did you go in the Adriatic Sea, Adrian?
Yeah, come on, man.
And then
Poor planning.
And then I had 2. Then I had like the one that makes consecrated ground, and then the 2 other ones, and it was like, well,
Now you have to go right by Zach.
he's got fists ready, just screaming for Dracula at the dock.
Yep.
Then he turned into a wolf.
Like a bitch.
Bullshit.
Oh, and then there was another one in, I think, that same game where we were all like talking about, Adrian could have gone to these places, and then we just missed one of them where you weren't, but you were like sitting there like, God damn, like you. Like, obviously, you said after the game, like, oh, you wanted to be like, well, what about such and such? But, like, we were just not even, like, we just missed it somehow, but you weren't there, so it worked out for us.
Yeah, because like, basically, it was one of those things where like, you could have went away from me or towards me, and you ignored away from me entirely, and I wanted to be like, guys, but there's no good way to do that, because if I'm like, hey guys, what about over here? Yeah. And you'd be like, oh, well, you wouldn't have brought that up if that's where you were, so we can really discount that now.
Yeah.
It's best to just be quiet as Dracula.
Just look away from everybody. Just put glasses on and
Maybe just leave the room.
In components, we did miss. So there is the giant board of Europe, but they do also come with a tiny little personal map sheet of Europe. So Dracula can look at that to see where he wants to go.
And
Instead of having to look over this huge map and be like, oh, what city is that one? Can anyone tell me what that one is, please?
for no reason.
No reason.
Yeah, no, it's super helpful in
Asking
that
for
regard.
a friend.
Yeah, I mean, if that didn't exist, the first thing that I would have done is printed off a map, basically.
Yeah.
But it's nice that they included that.
It's weird how Jeff keeps looking at England.
Kind of a downside of gameplay that can crop up, and this happened for me in our most recent play, where I finally decided to like not be Dracula and give Jeff the chance. As one of the hunters, I found myself in a situation where I felt like I didn't really get to participate. I was always a little bit behind. Like, everybody else was always running into Dracula and fighting Dracula and on his trail, and I was always just a little bit out of position. Like, the one time I got really close, Dracula was like, oh, here's this card where I take control of your train ride, and now you go 2 spaces the opposite
You're
direction.
in Italy now. You're not in northern Germany.
No.
And so that can happen, and that's where...
I do have to say, you were not doing nothing. Your position alone was still fucking me over. Even though I don't know if you were in like personal contact, like It's all about teaming together for position.
Yeah, to close the net.
It was about creating a screen. You had a screen going, Adrian.
Your screen was going well,
Yeah.
even though you weren't running into me.
And that's where
That's a huge part of it.
And that's where part of making this game work is, especially for the hunters, because as an individual hunter, you can end up in a situation like that, and that can be very frustrating. But that's where like all the hunters kind of still working together and debating about where Dracula is and arguing over things or debating or, you know, having their own ideas about like what we should do. You know, like, oh, should one of us like hang back in case he tries to double around? Like, should we cut around here?
I think that's the main part of the game, really, is the discussion. So, like, even though Adrian was the screen and, like, you know, he was fucking Jeff's positioning up, but, you know, obviously Adrian doesn't directly know that that's happening. So, that's a...
and we should mention, Dracula doesn't travel by train.
Yes.
It's too highfalutin new technology for him.
Oh, yeah.
He only travels by road where all of the hunters can travel by train. And so that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, if Dracula could travel by train, he'd be able to run too far.
Yeah, carriage at all times. Or wolf. Travels by wolf.
Oh, he turns into a wolf.
That's traveling by wolf.
Yeah.
Fair.
That's why you just shoot every wolf you see in the game.
Yes, exactly.
From the train.
Yeah, from the train.
Yeah.
And you discard every dog card you can because dogs are too close to wolves. Canines can't be trusted.
Yes.
And we do, and that's one of the things I like about a thematic game like this. We kind of make up our own stories and have a lot of fun on the way of the nightmare that usually happens.
Yeah. Like the one we all four played together where I was Dracula. At the start of the game, Zach was like, okay, I'm going to be, you know, this rich guy whose abilities are wealth and privilege. And my whole goal is to punch Dracula in the face.
Yep.
I'm just going to punch him right in the face.
And what happened
Turn one, it was just
of that first combat?
No, I was just going to say, is that just turn one, like that was my goal from the onset of just like, my fists are coming.
As we're setting up the game, this is all he'll talk about.
They were seekers of justice.
And so then like 3 or 4 turns later into the game, he was the one who tracked down Dracula, jumped on Dracula, and like fought Dracula. And I'm sitting there as Dracula, and I'm like,
he had said exactly what he was going to do all game.
And I'm sitting there looking at my cards. I'm like, you know, because it's kind of a rock paper scissors type game at that point in the combat.
Yeah,
where whatever card Zach plays might trump certain of my cards. And I'm like, he's been saying the whole time he's going to punch me, but I feel like maybe he's lying about that. So I'm going to play the thing that would counteract not the punch.
And so what's the first thing I did? Punch.
There's the punch.
Punched him right in the face.
Yep. And then it was great because I punched, and then so the next card I did was just a gun to the face.
The pistol right behind it.
Yeah, and then another, and then you broke the pistol, and I'm like, oh, that's fine because I've got a fist still. And so the first battle, you were at like fucking half health by the time you were able to leave. It also helped. So this game, the certain event cards are like, it's only for this one specific person.
Yes.
Which luckily I had got that card. And it was just like Sarah's Revenge or something like that. Yeah. That was basically like the first time Dracula would try and play a card that would make him leave. It just cancels the card. So it was like, you're fucking staying here with my fist. That's what's happening.
Yeah, that game, Adrian got particularly unlucky in that regard because pretty much everybody got their special card.
Yeah.
Like
And
off the top with like, there's only one way to get it to other people otherwise, and that's through Van Helsing. But like Mina Harker drew Hypnosis, Lord Goldeming drew Sarah's Revenge.
Van Helsing did indeed draw his own. I never got to use it, but...
Yeah. Which then, like, because games like this tend to do these kinds of things where storylines bleed over a little bit. Mm-hmm. In the next game, where Jeff was Dracula and I was Mr. Wealth and Privilege, when I went up to fight him, I was like, Jeff's definitely going to expect me to punch him in the face, so he's going to play to counter the punch. So I'll do something that's not the punch. And then, no, Jeff... Totally.
No,
If I'd punched, I would have been successful.
Yeah.
And so Zach was like, Adrian, you're playing the character wrong. He's supposed to use wealth and privilege for punching.
That is a game where I played my cards extremely well.
Oh, yeah. No, you owned us. Like, the combat was 100% Dracula. All of us just fucking sucked.
I got into more than purposefully, like, a lot of combats in the game because I was getting hunted down pretty well, but I thought, I mean, what's the interesting part about this game and interaction with other players? Like, throw down a lot of vampires, get close enough to where they can get you a little bit. And I just was playing my cards like, crush you, crush you, crush you. Oh, you did nothing to me? Bite, hypnotize, or mesmerize, bite, fangs.
Well, I mean, the other thing there too is like we, as Adrian hinted to, like we could have played our cards better and canceled these things, but Jeff just had our number and we just got rocked.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, it's not, and I'm more okay with that kind of a combat situation where it's like a rock, paper, scissors, where it's like, for whatever, random reason, Jeff picked better than I did. He chose to not do, like what I thought. And again, I don't know how much, Jeff was sitting there like overthinking it. Like, last time Adrian totally got punched in the face. So he's going to expect me to expect him to punch. But that means, like that whole Princess Bride, like.
No, I'm pretty sure you were playing checkers and Jeff was playing fifth dimensional chess.
Yeah.
And I didn't, and I mean, to make the game more interesting, I wasn't flying away the first second that I could, because there is a limit on like how fast Dracula can get away.
Yeah.
And like flyways bats and flyways mist.
I mean, and to be fair, you really didn't need to.
Well, yeah. And as Dracula, it's more like, it is legitimately more fun as Dracula if you get caught to beat the crap out of one of the hunters and then run away and then like
and a lot of times
finish the entire combat and
a lot
then
of
be
times
forced
where
to
I was
leave.
making you what was the bite token, the wounded?
Yes, wounded.
Where it makes you play with
Weakened.
cards weakened, make you with cards face up, where you actually get bitten by a vampire. And I was trying to play that, but all my guys that could do it, we were doing during like a day combat and didn't work.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever. I know I did get one bitten token off
You
that
did.
game.
Yeah, you bit Van Helsing, who can
can
be-
take two bites.
who can take
Yeah.
2 before he gets defeated.
But it's just a slap in the face,
Yeah.
biting
Yeah.
Van Helsing.
Yeah, and he was. So we only had the 4 of us playing for this game, and so the way that works is one person just plays 2. So I was playing both Mina Harker and Van Helsing. And Mina Harker was the character I was playing who had all the stuff for fighting, but then she got defeated, and then Jeff just jumped right on Van Helsing, who had fuck all as far as weapons. He had garlic, and that was about it.
And then I was like, claw.
Yep.
Yeah, no, you
Which
fucked
just
him
rips
up.
the garlic away. I think that, and that was the one and only game where we had somewhere a hunter defeated.
Yes.
I think in all of our games. I know you've played more than we have.
Yeah.
David. Have you ever defeated hunters in previous games?
So I've only played Dracula that one time.
Okay.
And it was maybe my 3rd time playing. And so I hadn't yet figured out that Dracula needs to be more that DM role, ensuring that everybody's having fun. So there were no combats, and they never found me. And it was not fun.
It was not fun.
No.
And that's kind of what I wanted to make the last game that we played. More
Right.
fun. And I think that was probably the game that had the most combats out of any game
Oh, yeah,
we
definitely.
had played.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was a lot of combats.
Yeah,
and it was definitely it was more fun that way.
Yeah, and especially because this game, like you said, like Adrian said, it takes 2 to 3 hours, and we've had it go 5+ hours.
Well, that one was
Well, I
also
know.
because we were at a bar,
Yes.
and that was a poor decision.
That's why, yeah. But yeah, especially if you had it where it was no combat or anything like
Yeah.
that, it would just be.
Here's 5 hours later.
Yes.
No one did anything but move around.
Yeah, no, the one where I was the DM was very bad. I was 2 into, like I said, it was my 3rd time
You were
playing.
just 2 into trying to win.
I wanted to win,
Win condition.
and I didn't think about, is everybody else having fun?
Yeah.
Which is something that I think is important for Dracula to think about.
And I did something different. I started in England.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that was definitely an experience.
Which would have probably worked fantastic if we hadn't almost immediately gotten the thing. It was
Yeah,
like, hey,
first
Jeff,
card I
where
drew
are you?
was-
exactly where,
Hypnocus, and I was-
where are you exactly?
Yeah, it was great
yeah.
because David was both Van Helsing and Mina Harper, so I was like, David was trying to figure out what to do with his turn. I'm like, David, you should trade with me as Van Helsing.
Yeah. Yeah, because as I mentioned before, Van Helsing is the only person who can trade event cards.
He's a letter writer. Well, you
Yes.
can trade event cards, but you have to be in the same city.
No, only items.
Yep.
Van
Oh,
Helsing
wow.
is the only way you can trade events.
Yep.
Correct.
He writes a lot of letters.
He does.
Yeah, and I don't know if we want to touch on that at all, but I feel like the characters are differentiated enough that
Oh, yeah, they
playing a
definitely are.
different character makes the game different for you, which is nice.
Oh yeah, some of them are definitely geared more towards like combat and fighting. Some of them are better at getting items and things. Others like
Want to hang around other
Yeah.
players.
Yep.
like Mina has the downside that she starts with a bite, so she has to have an event and an item face up for Dracula to see.
Yep.
But she has her special ability where if she's in the same town as somebody else, she can be like, "Hey, Dracula, are you in our area?"
Are you in this region?
Yeah.
So I agree that they have different strengths and weaknesses for each character, which makes playing them feel different.
I did like after the hypnosis in the last game, I got the anti-hypnosis, which was basically like you can see through his eyes, but what if he can see through yours? And that's what I immediately did after you did it, and like delayed and discarded a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
There's the event cards in that game can definitely change your enjoyment of each game.
Yeah,
For sure.
But you bullshit pulled off. I think I got 4 total event cards by like week 3, which was insane because you were pulling off the bottom of that shit like crazy.
Yeah.
and most of them came from me because I was like, let's try it one more time.
but I've been doing so well.
Yeah, I can't help it. It can't happen again. Oh, son of a bitch.
Yeah, it certainly couldn't.
And it did.
Some were nice, some weren't.
But I think part of it, though, is like the same sort of thing where Adrian was saying. It's like when you just feel like you're perpetually chasing Dracula, but then that's it. You're like, well, let's see if I get an event. Maybe that'll help change my situation at some point. So
And you can play those event encounter cards as Dracula enough to where you're DMing a little bit to where they're having fun to where like, oh shit, I need to get away.
yeah. But then when you draw the second event card that's just like, oh, you can move 2 spaces in water, and Dracula is heavily in Central Europe, you're like, okay, well, this is another fucking useless card.
Yeah. Yeah, it can get bad, but I mean, there was one point in the game where you could have used that card to like jump to the ocean, and then like next turn you would have been like literally right on top of me, and that would have saved everyone like a whole round.
Yeah.
Of knowing where I came to land.
Yep.
Well, I didn't have that card when you were anywhere near the ocean.
That's fair. There are the advanced cards that we have done some house rules on.
Yeah, well, we really only did the one because
You can heal for 4 as Dracula,
Which is pretty powerful, considering your health is 15.
yes.
but you have to wait for it to fall off the encounter track before you can use it again. But we've made it to where you can only use it once per game.
Yeah.
There's enough other healing cards in the game that like being able to heal 4 every 6 like every week basically is super powerful, especially when you might not even do that much damage to Dracula in a single combat. That like he gets in one combat, heals it all away.
Yeah. Well, and it was especially because when Dracula goes onto the ocean, he takes damage. And so like that's part like, you know, it makes it a lot easier for him to move around Europe, but it has the drawback of you're taking damage by doing this. And so if you're immediately able to, as soon as you land, you're like, well, I'm just going to heal and I get back most of that health. Then and it incentivizes.
Now I'm at 14.
Exactly. And you're halfway across the continent where we're all up near England. And you're like, I'm going to hang out, you know, past Greece and Italy and all that stuff. So it's like it takes us a while to get to you. And then we still don't know where you are. And it just
there's like 5 different port towns.
Exactly, and that just you're just like, and if you're trying to win, you can just be like, oh, I'm just going to hang around here for like 4 turns, and I can just hop back out into the ocean and just go all the way back around again, and it's just it could be frustrating.
It's definitely possible for Dracula to game the system if you let them, like from a meta perspective, if you let them have access to all these powers and let them, you know, play them abusively. So there is a little bit of playing and realizing like how like maybe your people who you play with don't play Dracula that way, so it's not an issue. And you can have that heal card in there so that like Dracula's constantly getting the shit kicked out of him and is like, oh my god, I really need to be able to do this every few turns to have a chance.
Yeah.
You know, but maybe you have a Dracula who is like me, who gets really desperate sometimes, is like, I'm going to go hide on this tiny little island. And
then I'm going to play hide so I don't have to move. And then I'm going to go back to the ocean.
And then I'm going to play this other thing so I don't have to do anything. And
then my card matured that lets me wipe off all the ocean tiles again. And now I can just hang out in the ocean.
Not even that. Like the full-on cheese strat is you land on the island, you heal, you hide, you play the card that lets you clear out an ocean space, you go back on that ocean space, and then you just say fuck you to everybody.
Yeah. Well, and especially because unlike the city tiles, even if you know that Dracula's in this ocean, you can't do anything about it. Because he's out in the ocean. So.
It's a big space.
At some point, I had the ability to just jump into the ocean and then I had enough health left to where I could just move around the continent in the ocean to where I would have gotten enough victory points at the end where no one could even touch me or do anything.
Yeah, you could have you could have survived.
I mean, you still did that. Like you still won. Like you didn't go do the cheese trap through the ocean.
No.
But no, you still stayed ahead of us and won in the same amount. Like it would have taken the same amount of turns. But we felt like we were more on your tail and had a chance of being in it. Than not.
Because I was moving around Europe and not just moving in the ocean where you couldn't do anything about it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think as I've played 7 times now. Like, after the first time, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to have Dracula try the advanced rules. And then now I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, I'd rather just play regular, at least for a while. I feel like if you've played with a group of people and you've played together quite a bit, giving Dracula the advanced cards is probably useful. But I think it, at least for us, where I have this tendency, Adrian had it in our game, have the tendency to want to win as Dracula.
For sure.
I think not giving them access to the advanced cards might allow them to feel more like, yes, I want to win, so I'm going to try this, but then it reins them back a little bit in power so they don't have that issue of, oh, nobody's having fun because I'm just hiding in the ocean.
This comes up a lot in one versus all type of games. Like, I know that was one of the big things that I had a realization about with first edition Mansions of Madness, is that, like, as the overseer, you can crush the investigators in that game. But then it's not fun for them, and then nobody will want to play that game anymore.
And I think for that one, at least for me, you feel more like a DM, so it seems like it could come more naturally. Yeah. Whereas this one, you're like, oh, I'm Dracula. I'm trying to hide away. So obviously I should just try and run away. Like, I should run away.
Could be enough of a prideful bitch to be like, let me smack you around a little bit and know just how fucked you are.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a common thing, because when it's a one versus all, obviously you have to tilt the advantage a little bit in favor of the one, because he's facing 4 different people. But if you tilt it too much, then it gives them a lot of power to just ruin it for, 70% of the table.
Yeah.
Like, that's not cool. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers most everything gameplay-wise.
Everything but the Dracula error.
Yes.
Yeah. So
it hasn't come up, but
it almost came up. So Dracula can only use 1 card per city, but if he corners himself or can't jump off into anywhere that's a legal move, he has to wipe the board of everywhere he's moved and take a shit ton of damage.
He loses 5 health.
Because it's entirely hidden base, you're basically doing it on the trust system.
Yeah.
But if you guys are able to figure out, you're like, okay, well, he basically circled this area. He circled this city and then went into that city, so he literally has no place else to go, and then he places a card. That's when you're like, Dracula, you done fucked up.
Yep. We almost pulled that off with some consecrated ground in Dracula's castle. Would have killed Adrian playing as Dracula, and would have Dracula errored himself to death.
Yep.
Downside, I think, what was the one thing you could have done? You went into combat with us instead of taking a Dracula error, I think was your only choice.
I don't know if it got quite that dire. I think I had a couple options, but I decided that was my best one. Like, basically, it got to a point where if I went one path, I would have been incredibly predictable, because it would have been like, he can only go here or it's a Dracula error. He can only go here or it's a Dracula error.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And then the other option was like, I can fight them in this town, and then that opens up multiple opportunities to maybe get away.
Yeah.
But that was a very valuable lesson, as Dracula is like, don't back yourself into a really shitty corner.
Yeah.
Like Dracula's castle.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing that reminded me of, it's important for Dracula to have like a notepad, or maybe use your phone to keep track of where you are. That way you don't necessarily have to spend so much time looking at, because every time someone moves to a city, it's like, Dracula, have you ever been in Paris? And then it would be good for Dracula to know yes or no, because maybe you can't remember all 6 places or whatever, and you also have the choice to then ambush. So it might be good to keep track of that information.
Yeah, for sure. Especially because, like, if they're getting close to you as Dracula and they're like, "Oh, were you here?" and you're like, "Shit, I'm not sure if I actually was there, like on turn 7 or turn 6." Like, and then they see you looking at cards and they know, like, okay, well, clearly we're on the right track because he's not sure. Whereas, like, if you can just reference a sheet and be like, "No, I'm not there. I haven't been there in, long enough that there's no trail there. There's nothing." No. So yeah, definitely have a small notepad or something for Dracula. Plus, then it's fun to, like, be able to go back through and see, like, what decisions Dracula actually made and where they traveled.
Mine is right here.
Yeah, I have mine on my phone still. So, but yeah, so that's I think that pretty much covers all the major gameplay stuff. I mean, it's one of those games where there's so many, like, little things we could talk about, different little weird circumstances all night long.
Weapons and rifles and holy bullets and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yep.
But all right, final thoughts.
Dracula accoutrement.
Mm-hmm.
Zach, would you like to start with final thoughts?
Sure. I'm pretty meh on this game. But I think a lot of that is I don't know how I feel about hidden movement games yet.
Okay.
Because I remember when I played the Pandemic one, the On the Brink with the Bioterrorists, I was like, this is okay. And I've only played as the Hunter, but it always felt sort of, especially for how long this game is, it just felt really frustrating. You're just like, all right, well, he's over here. Let's just sort of move over there. All right, well, we think he's going over there, so let's just keep going over there. And you don't feel as active in participation as you would want in a game that would take 3 to 4 hours long. There are definitely times when, I think I had a lot more fun in the first game versus the other game because I was able to get more into the character and I was just able to be ridiculous, and there was a story that came out from that. Whereas the other time it was just I was the priest guy and it was just like I'm just gonna follow here and
wander around Europe.
Wandering around Europe. And like we were saying earlier, I have only played where you actually have hypnosis, so you get some sort of idea of where he's around. So I can't even imagine a game where you're just like, we have no idea where he is, and so everyone's just sort of wandering around aimlessly until somebody catches something. And that sounds like it would just be even more frustrating. I feel like if there are like 25% less cities or something, it would like... Because it always just felt like there were just way too many places that he could go to start off with.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that we've touched on where Dracula needs to keep in mind other people's enjoyment.
Exactly.
Of the game.
Yeah, definitely that. And I think it's just because you don't feel like, at least from the other side, it doesn't feel as much of a DM style, like a traditional DM style role, that unless you actively are thinking about that, it is way too easy to just be like, I want to win.
And then nowhere in the rules is it like, hey, try and make it at least a little fun.
Exactly, yeah.
It's sort of just something that comes out playing.
Yeah.
And that might just be our play group too.
Oh, I think definitely has a lot to do with our play group.
So, I think this would be a game where it's like, if I don't play it again, I don't feel like I'm missing out.
It's good because you can never buy it again.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. But then I have to play more hidden movement style ones to figure out if I just don't like that genre enough. Because I feel like Star Wars Rebellion was different enough because you choose where it is, but then that's pretty much where it is until you move it.
With at least a one-turn barrier.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So I do feel that it's fundamentally different than someone who's just constantly on the run. But yeah, that's basically how I feel about it.
Yep. For myself, I mirror a lot of Zach's thoughts on it. I don't think I'd go so far as to saying that if I never played it again, I'd be okay with that. Like, I feel like this is a game where occasionally I'm going to get that itch. Like, where I'm like, I really want to be Dracula and lead some hunters on a chase. I don't think it's going to be terribly often. It'll probably be something like, oh, for whatever reason, I just recently rewatched Dracula or some other vampire movie. And
Dead
now,
loving it.
Yeah. And now I want to do vampire things. I think that it is definitely a game that's going to be heavily group dependent. The hunters need to be a group of, everybody who's playing the hunters need to be the kind of people who can communicate and talk and not necessarily argue, but at least discuss what their plans are. If you're kind of a pushover and you're on the hunter team, that's not going to go well for you because somebody's to be like, oh no, I think Dracula's over here. We need to go do this. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to go do that.
But he could be here or here or here.
I think that's one way where our group is really great is that we like to voice our opinions.
We are a bunch of strong personalities.
Yeah.
So that's something to be aware of going into this game. I think that also, the other thing to be aware of is that sometimes, this is a game like any game with a bunch of random cards and things. The card draws can be very disadvantageous, whether you're a hunter or whether you're Dracula. Sometimes the hunters are going to draw a whole bunch of Dracula cards and Dracula's going to get real powerful. Sometimes as Dracula, all of the Dracula cards are in the middle of the deck and they never show up. Isn't that right, Jeff?
Indeed.
So
You still kicked our ass.
Yeah.
Barely.
You didn't need those cards.
I've enjoyed it though overall, and yeah, I could see myself wanting to play this again in the future occasionally. Jeff,
I really like this game. It's a bummer that it's not going to be available anymore. I think the hidden role in there is really, really cool. It's totally asymmetrical between the hunters and Dracula, even though it is a 4v1. Definitely a game that needs to be best played at 5-player, with all 4 hunters being 4 different people, mostly because you can get a little advantage knowing what cards you have and what needs to get traded if you're playing more than one character, specifically Van Helsing and Mina. But it's not crazy, unbalanced if you're playing with only 4. But then at 3-player, it's 2 players. You always play with all 4 hunters, no matter what. It's just who's playing what. I want to see more game, because like those event cards throw out all those special tokens and stuff that you're not going to see from game to game. A lot of the tokens we saw in that last game we played were not in any of the other games at all. You guys didn't get any of the consecrated ground tokens at all that whole game, where like when we were playing against Adrian, I totally fucked him with those.
Yep.
Super hard.
Yeah.
Just because I had the right hand of cards. So there's a ton of variability in the game, which is welcome. Don't play Dracula if you're new to the game. That's also super important. Know what, like if you have a new group of players that want to play this game, have someone go deep dive into how this game is played, because they're going to need to know a lot on how to at least make the game fun / not just destroy everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I really like this game.
Right on. David, what about you?
I like the game as well. I think it would be interesting to play it with other people that aren't solidly in our group. I have friends that I've played it with that aren't.
You have other friends?
Yes, I have other friends.
Oh.
I know, surprising.
2 of them. He's got 2 of them.
Two, sometimes 3. I don't know. Yeah, so I've played it with some other people, but I'd like to get more plays with outside this group and see how the game plays, because like I said, we do have people want to win, which is valid. I like to win, and I definitely have done that with Dracula. I would say I don't think I'm as high on it as Jeff is, but I definitely like the game, and I'd like to play it more. I'd like to play Dracula again now that I've come to the realization that Dracula is more about facilitating. Like, yes, you can win, but it's also about facilitating the fun for the group at the table. So I think I'd like to play Dracula like that, and
with at least the tools you have at the time.
Yeah.
'Cause sometimes you might be like, well, if I don't fuck them, I'm fucked.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, I'm not saying you need to not try to win, but I'm saying there's trying to win, and there's maximizing your winning potential while making it not fun, which is
you can maximize that pretty hard sometimes.
Yep.
yeah.
Right on. I think that pretty much wraps up everybody's final thoughts for this. Unfortunately, as far as price and availability, this is getting really hard to get your hands on. It's not widely available through any major locations. I think you can still pick it up on Amazon for around $100. Yeah. Otherwise, keep an eye out on places like eBay or PGG's marketplace.
Yeah.
And see what you can find there.
I've seen it peak up at some littler conventions and stuff like that for reasonable prices, like Beacon and stuff. Like last year, they had plenty of copies available.
Small retailers might still have stock.
Brick and mortar, because I think they did push out a last, like pretty well after their, like, we're not printing this anymore. I think even 6 months after, they pushed out a last shipment to retailers.
Yeah. You can find it. It's just going to take a little bit of work on your part. Yeah.
I think even like Total Escape on 120th still has it.
Okay. Right on. We didn't get any responses on our BGG thread for this one, so we don't have anything like that to address. But did get one reply on Twitter. Jay Baptiste says, nice. Because I posted that, hey, we're reviewing Fury of Dracula. He says, nice. But do you know where I can find a box? Are they going to print it again? This game seems so good, but I can't play it for any face. So, like we just said, it's hard to find. Maybe local board game stores might have it. They might not. As far as whether or not they're going to print it again,
nope.
Probably not anytime
at
soon,
least not
certainly.
in this theme.
Yeah.
If there's a 4th edition that somebody puts out eventually.
Yeah.
It'll be from Games Workshop and possibly under their own publishing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is good, and I hope you do get to play it at some point.
Check your friendly local game store. That is definitely your best bet.
So, but right on. Thanks everybody for tuning in and listening to this episode. It's been a whole bunch of fun. Be sure and tune in next Wednesday for our next regular episode. And yeah, we'll have a review next week. We are working out the details on what exactly that will be. We're trying to do something kind of awesome. It's also start of football season, which is messing with my schedule. So
But
sorry about that.
Only his,
Only
yeah.
mine.
Yeah, so y'all two better play more Murder Island to counteract the football talk.
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
Yes, when you Jeff.
I'm getting
don't
past
just go
the,
to
like-
sleep after work every day now.
I'm getting past the exhausted
Okay.
everyday phase and
Okay.
might be actually up for at least an hour after work.
Okay. All right.
But if you want to keep abreast of what our review episode will be sure to go over to our Board Game Geek Guild number 2731, and join up there, where Zach will have a thread up as soon as we finalize what our review is going to be. Like I said, we got
Depending
a couple.
on
We got a couple
possibly
things.
other people's schedules.
Yeah,
or
that's
changing
mainly the thing we're
plans
waiting
and-
on is other people's schedules to coincide with ours. Trying to have more guests to freshen things up.
Hot takes.
Hot takes. Otherwise, you can always get a hold of us through email.
Emails at milehighgameguys.com.
You can also find us on Twitter. I tweet under at MHGameGuys.
I am Zach_MHGG.
And I'm Jeff_MHGG.
And David remains anonymous on Twitter.
Yeah, it's still secret.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
No.
Yes.
You can
That's
follow
not
us.
my Twitter handle.
It's entirely too long. You're right.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram /MileHighGameGuys. Be sure to take a look at our Patreon page if you are interested in potentially supporting the show. It's patreon.com/MileHighGameGuys. We've got a pretty good little bit of support going already from some listeners, which we incredibly appreciate.
We have T-shirts because of this.
Correct. And we're going to do more and more awesome things going forward thanks to that support.
I have to play Food Chain again.
Yes.
Clearly, tote bags.
Easily the best thing to come out of the Patreon is that Zach has to play Food Chain one more time.
Tote bags.
Tote bags, yep.
Tote bags.
Bigs.
But yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this review. And until next time, as always, I've been your host, Adrian.
I'm still Zach.
And I'm Jeff the Impaler.
And thanks for joining us, David.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Punchboard Media,
where we all
Bring something
to the table.
pull up a chair
At punchboardmedia.com.